And we're recording. Welcome to the David the Dog Trainer podcast, episode 13. Unlucky numbers.
Yes.
Snow.
Yeah.
It's because it's number 13.
I
That's why
knew
it's
it.
snowing. Today we're joined by Josh Dobe Productions,
Hello.
Matt Slaughter.
Hello.
How's it going? How's everybody doing?
Fantastic. Weather sucks.
Yeah. Not only is it the 13th episode, it is also on April Fool's Day.
That's the funniest thing about the snow, I think, right now, is
Yeah.
that it's literally on April 1st.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's snowing out there right now.
Yeah.
Like, it ain't
It's
just
a blizzard.
snow. Yeah.
2 days ago, 70 degrees.
So I just want to say that I predicted this a long time ago. Back when we first started getting those nice days, everybody was like, oh, I think we're in the clear. And I was just like, we're getting one more snowfall.
Rookies.
One more. People don't understand. We live in Cleveland, Ohio. Mm-hmm. I like it. I like the snow. I'm not mad about it. Everybody else is mad about it. Kate got up this morning and walked to open the window, and like I'm still like laying in bed like half asleep, and she's just like, fuck. Just like, yeah, like she like sounded so concerned. I was like, oh my God, like what's wrong? Like, I got up and she's like, it snowed. And I was like, oh, that's not really.
I mean, I had the same reaction. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it was like a dramatic, it was a dramatic reaction though. Like I like legitimately was like, is everything okay? Are all the dogs here? Is the cat alive?
Yeah. See, people like that trust the universe too much.
I completely agree.
I expected this.
I completely agree. Cool. What's everybody been up to? Josh, what's the last week looked like?
It's been busy.
Yeah,
Very
Cloak and
busy.
Dagger photos are good.
Yeah.
Going to Philly today?
Going to Philly
Driving
today.
in a blizzard. Actually,
Yeah.
that makes it even better.
Yeah, well, I talked to them this morning, my friends out there, and they said they have zero snow. So I'm hoping
I wonder
that...
if it's moving that way.
I don't say that. I'm just hoping that I get past Pittsburgh and it's just beautiful skies. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I just did their spring drink menu too on
Saw they posted those food
Wednesday,
pictures
Tuesday.
too. They look very good.
Yeah, those came out really good.
Looks delicious.
The drink photos, just wait for those. Ooh,
Nice.
yeah, it's gonna be so good. Other than that, yeah, just going to Philly, getting tattooed, and doing a distillery. They're doing a little photo shoot for them, so it kind of pays for the trip, but not the tattoo.
Yeah, you know. That's the way it works. Matt,
Yeah.
what's new?
Training dogs, learning about training dogs.
Pull that mic a little closer.
Got a new
There we
dog.
go.
Is that better?
Yeah, a little bit.
Training dogs, learning about training dogs. Got a new dog.
All the dog
And
things.
it's been so much fun.
That's awesome. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Well, I grew up on the west side of Cleveland, Ohio City, West Side Market area before it was cool.
What year would that have been? Years.
I was born in 84, so
Okay.
from
She's like 36, something like
I'm
that.
36, yeah.
Oh, God, that was good mental math. I'm not usually good like that.
Yeah. So I don't think Ohio City Gordon Square got cool until I want to say like 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And like Barcento started it.
Yeah,
Barcento and Johnny Mangoes were just like the staples over there.
Johnny Mango's the jam.
Love Johnny
It
Mangoes.
is the jam.
Those are my
Even though it's a vegetarian place, food is still very good though, and they have some of the best margaritas. I
It
feel
was one of the first places that you could actually eat vegan, and
Yeah.
you still can. But I grew up over there. Worked in restaurants for 12 years, doing all sorts of stuff, front of the house, back of the house, all that stuff, and then transferred over to sales. Sold food to restaurants, helped them with their menus, stuff like that. Not the graphic design, but the costing and ideas and stuff like that, creative.
yeah.
And then got laid off because of COVID, July 24th of 2020. And I was already miserable with that and looking for a way out. And
For sure.
Once that happened, I was like, time to reset. How much fun could I actually have doing a job?
Yeah.
And, I had met you about a year prior. And I think you just planted another seed in me. It was just so inspiring how effective it was. And
Sure.
at that point, after I never told you this, but I thought that I could train dogs before I met you. When Diana told me that she hired you, not knowing who you were,
Sure.
it was kind of a blow to my ego.
Hey, listen, I think everybody has a little bit of that, though. You know, I mean, I don't think that that's abnormal by any means or bad by any means. You know, I had this conversation. I don't think it was you. I think it was somebody else. I think that there's something so it's like ingrained in us that we should know how to train our dogs, right? Like when we get an animal, it's like we grew, because I feel like growing up, like I didn't have a dog growing up, but I knew a lot of people that did, and everybody was all like, and everybody that comes in, they're like, my parents trained our family dog, and my dad did this, or my husband did this, or whatever it may be. The problem was they weren't actually training the dog, right? They were either just getting really good dogs in the first place, or the dogs were never leaving their property. So they just got used to having this dog that was just coexisted well in their home, right? Sure. And then in addition to that, people used to live very differently with dogs. So because of that, they didn't see a lot of those problems that you would see from the recent way that people live with their dogs, But anyways, yeah, go ahead.
So you'll laugh about this, and I've also never told you this. The reason that I thought I knew how to train dogs was because I read a book called, you ready? Dog Training for Dummies.
It was literally one of those yellow books.
They have one of those?
So it was priority number one.
They had it for dummies they had everything for dummies.
They sure did.
Yeah.
But I will say the one good thing about that is it made me good at preventing behavior problems. As far as like training, it was like number one priority, sit. Number two priority, shake. It's like, that's going to help me.
Shake is one of those, it's the necessary command.
So anyway, I met you, and, I went in there. I didn't fuss about it or anything, but literally within 5 minutes, you solved every problem that I've never been able to solve. And I was just like, okay, when's our next appointment with this guy?
That's funny.
So, when I was a teenager, we'd foster dogs, like one dog a month, and find them homes for like 3 years. So I had a little bit of fun with some treat, sit, stuff like that. So maybe that was a seed planted, but it was very inspirational to see you work. So, once I was looking for a way out of my sales career, which was a 7-day eye open to eyes shut nightmare. And once they laid me off, I was just like, man, do I do landscaping or dog training? Yeah, I'm going to call David.
Yeah.
So
you could just go cut people's bushes down in front.
Dude, yeah.
Just if you want to be a landscaper.
That's another part of the Unlucky 13 today.
Reminds me of that Rick James skit from Chappelle Show. F yo couch.
Yeah.
F yo yard.
F your bush. Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate you guys.
But yeah, I've been doing my own thing now since November. Extremely quiet, and trying to do it right. With integrity and staying in my lane and learning from guys like you and all the resources and whatnot. It's been really fun, but it's been humbling too.
For sure. I think one of the things I've enjoyed about kind of talking about dog training related things with you and why I wanted to have you on and stuff is because even though you've been doing it for such a short period of time, like pushing experience and all that, and the actual dog training to the side, you have a very interesting viewpoint on the industry, and you have a very interesting way of looking at how you're building your business, right? And you could correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think a lot of that has to do with your background in sales and marketing and all of that kind of stuff, and especially in the restaurant industry, I've never worked in it myself, but through people I know that do, there's a lot of nuanced detail that goes into it and a lot of planning that goes into it and things you have to be super, super aware of, where I think that's kind of bleeding over into just how you've created your programs and some of the breakdowns you showed me and things like that. I think it's ahead of what most people who have been training dogs for a couple of years are at, So I've definitely enjoyed that kind of stuff. And that's something I do want to get into and talk about here at some point, is how you think that kind of correlates. But
it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does. And, sales is one thing, and that has helped me. There's a lot that I could take from that, but restaurants, really just the importance of being organized. There's a saying, mise en place. I don't know if you ever heard that. It's a French culinary term that means being prepared, having everything you need before the rush. And just being prepared, having everything structured so that if chaos hits, at least it's organized chaos.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, okay, so you made the decision you were going to kind of go off, start trying to do your thing. Now you kind of started with, it sounds like, just doing some, I remember we talked originally, doing some dog walking, getting hands-on with dogs, stuff like that, and then started transitioning to helping with training certain behaviors to actually offering training programs. And what have you, in the short period of time you've been doing it for, what are some of your biggest takeaways and learning points you feel like you found through doing some of that?
Specifically in dog training or just in general?
Just in general, yeah.
Well, it's just, I've taken up a lot of hobbies in my life, and it was no different with this, that it's kind of funny how you walk into something thinking that it will be, I don't want to say easy,
Yeah.
but you don't see all the challenges. And as a matter of fact, the better the dog trainer, the easier they make it look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not someone who doesn't respect anything I go into. But like I said before, it's humbling. And all the little things that, people like you on your videos aren't saying are so important.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to it for
exactly.
sure. You know,
Yeah.
that's with every industry. You know, there's certain things I've looked at too where it's like, oh, that shouldn't be that difficult, right? But then you get into it and you start kind of digging into it and stuff, and you realize like what really all is entailed in it. It's pretty cool to see.
And then the other bigger thing too is that I thought that there was just this one perfect way that you could find to train a dog.
Sure.
Like this check
Yeah.
this box, and it's so much more important to, sure, you should have a structured program, ideally in a perfect world.
Yeah.
But you need to be ready to throw that right out the window, depending on the dog.
Yeah. 100%.
It's important.
100%. Yeah, I think the concepts and the learning theory and all of that, it's all the same from dog to dog, right? The methods you're using, but that kind of combination of how you do it and all of that, it can adjust so often, and you have to be aware. Just like we were talking about with Fritz, the dog I'm working with yesterday, right? How, we had our program, we're working him through, and then we get like halfway through his program, and because of some weird irrational fears and stuff that he has over like inanimate objects and environmental things and stuff like that, like we hit just like a huge roadblock with him where at that point I needed to know how to adjust that program to like what's going to keep this dog successful, get him back on track, and make sure we don't run into that roadblock again with him, and I think those are the things that I remember when I was really early in training. That shit would drive me bonkers, and I feel like I looked for answers in all the wrong places. Like I remember early on when I was finding, and I feel like I found it most of the time in one-on-ones, not necessarily board and trains, because you could adjust and you could experiment all you want when you have a dog. So much freedom, right? And kind of figure it out. In one-on-ones, when I would run into that kind of stuff, I didn't know what the fuck to do, And, you kind of get good at like BSing it a little bit, like as you're experimenting, right? Yeah, 100%. Like you're kind of acting through it a little bit to some extent. But like I remember I spent like a solid year or two just like reaching out to different trainers and just trying to find this like answer of like how do you avoid those problems, when in actuality it wasn't about avoiding those problems, it was about learning how to kind of bob and weave through them. That's interesting. I feel like I never really like looked at that way, but like I feel like a lot of people want, and this is where I feel like trainers can fall into this trap that go to like seminar to seminar to seminar to seminar to seminar, right? Not that it's not important to learn, obviously, like you're doing a lot of like checking this guy out and this guy out and this style out and this style out. But the problem is they're doing it with the purpose of trying to find that like magic pill, I feel like, as opposed to just like expanding their toolbox. Yeah. Right? Because the bigger your toolbox is with that kind of stuff, the more that when you encounter those issues, you could do things in a different way or adjust as needed to keep the dog successful. So
I think you and I have a similar mindset in that no matter what you're dealing with, no matter what resource you're reading, there's always going to be at least a little bit of a give and take where, I don't agree with this, but I'm going to take this, and you could take the best part of, that information and leave the rest.
Yeah,
there's always something to learn from someone, right?
Yeah,
even learning from their mistakes.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before on here. Of I think a lot of trainers out there, even the ones that we could heavily disagree with over things, they're doing things for a reason still, like they're doing A, B, C, or D because they do genuinely think that that's right and that's correct, and because they've seen success with it before, Nobody's doing stuff if it's never, ever been successful before with it, to some capacity. So you could still see that, and you could still figure out how to work through things depending on the dog, depending on the client, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, super cool. I think you're doing a really great job with your education and making sure that you're, expanding your knowledge base amongst a lot of different stuff,
Thank you, man.
And especially, God, I mean, I remember you told me a couple times, like some of these books, you're like, I read the book like twice or something. Like, Jesus Christ, like I've never even done that.
That means a lot coming from you. Yeah. Thank you. I just feel like I'm hitting the ground running.
Yeah.
And I have to I'm just cramming, but it's super easy because I've developed a passion, and I was saying before, I've taken up quite a few hobbies before where I feel like they, after a little while, didn't really motivate me. And the hobbies that motivated me the most were things that I went into thinking that they were easy. And then you just feel like you're just so insignificant in this giant world. And now it just opens up and you feel like, yeah, I know some stuff, but I don't know shit.
Yeah,
and this
for sure.
is like so interesting. And now I just feel like a dry sponge that needs to be, you know.
Josh, when it comes to like the photography industry and like when you were getting started in that, like, I feel like these things we talk about, like we've never really generalized it like this before. It's always been very narrow with dog training, but like I feel like that feeling and that kind of thirst to expand your knowledge without looking for just like really simple solutions for things, but for broader concepts, I feel like it's the same from, you know, industry to industry.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, especially I can relate, I guess, to both of you, honestly, but it's like you're on different lengths of your paths, you know? You know, he's started quite a few years before you have, but he did the same. I mean, you did the same thing. You just kind of jumped into it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I did with photography, too. It was just like, I was actually a manager at Melt. I worked at Melt for...
nice. Independence?
Cleveland Heights and Menor.
Okay.
Yeah, but, yeah, I mean, I had no idea. I had, like... a friend that like watched Casey Neistat videos, and I was like, "Oh, that seems cool." He's like a vlogger on YouTube, you know. I was like, "All right," and I just dumped a bunch of money into it and just like hit the ground running. Now I've been doing it for 4 years, but you know, I taught myself everything. But I mean, you know, as soon as I like feel good about something, you know, I'm like, "Oh, this looks great," and then
You hit a fucking roadblock, right?
Yeah.
It's like, God, and then you like are just like, everything I've been doing up to this point is wrong.
Yeah. And then, and so I don't know, maybe I'm a competitive person.
Sure.
But, so there's a really, 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 really great, pet photographer that is right across the parking lot from him, Greg Murray. And I always made like a joke, like he's my arch nemesis. Cause I used to do media for, Miracle Canine. And I was like, I have to get as good as him. Like, I got to do it better than Greg Murray or whatever. You know, it was just like playful in my head, but it was like, like seeing those people have been doing it and been great at it. You know, like I've taken little things from them and put it into my own style. But yeah, like that's what you have to do is like not get like you could have been like, oh my God, David's so like 1,000 times better than me. I shouldn't do this. Or you can be like, you know, David's inspiring, and that's why I want to get better at it. And you took it the right way. And like, I think it does correlate to anything. It's like, yeah, there's always going to be somebody better than you, and you got to learn why are they better than you? Like, what can you take from them to make yourself better?
Well, I think you said it well, where you said, you know, just at different lengths of the path or different points of the path.
Exactly.
It's not that, you know, sure, the person may be better, right? But they're just further along down that journey, right?
Exactly.
And the more that you can look at those and learn from, like, you know, we like to pick people apart, right? Like, you know, as a society, right? As far as like, oh, this person isn't doing this well or isn't doing this well or whatever it may be, as opposed to those are essential parts of that journey that made that person where they're at right now, right?
Exactly.
And if you could learn from those things in a non-judgmental way and not a I'm just trying to be so much better than you kind of thing, like all egotistical, and just instead be like, listen, you're at this stage, what are the hurdles that you faced along the way? You could shorten that journey tenfold. And I think that's something I tried to do a lot. And I think that's why I think a lot of people are really shocked when they see, I've been training dogs for like I think I had my Instagram or my Facebook notification come up today. I got my first business card that said, you know, me working for New Heights Dog Training and my name and trainer under it 7 years ago today.
Yeah.
Right. Which is cool that we're doing a podcast on the day. But 7 years, a lot of people look at me when they come in, they're like, this fucking young guy hasn't been training dogs for 25 years like all these other fucking guys. Right?
Yeah.
But because I spent so much time researching all these other people and talking to them and learning from them and stuff like that, I think that I've just cut my journey down quite a bit, right? And I think that's the reason why we've hit the success that we've hit. So I think that's a really, no matter what industry you're in, you have to be able to look at things that way. Yeah, you know.
I think it's important to have the right mindset as a student. You know, we talked yesterday about approaching things with an empty cup, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think people today, especially the bigger the ego, the more the problem, is that they don't know how to be inspired. You know, take music, for example. Every note's been played.
Sure.
You know, the difference between sometimes plagiarism and inspiration is a fine line, but you know, you can use others to hoist yourself up positively, you know, or you can just kind of fake it till you make it. Yeah. But you're going to be so much better off if you just drop the ego. You're going to learn so much quicker if you just, hey man, this is inspiring. Please tell me more.
And we've talked about that on this podcast before. Is just some people just in the dog training world, but everywhere in general, you know, you get stuck like, this is the way I've been doing it, and this is how this works, and like I don't need anyone else. Yeah, you know, and that it is that ego, and then they get stuck, and now they're getting left. Those people are getting left behind, and you can see it because they've never changed. What works.
Right. That's what I was thinking when he was mentioning that, you know, you were mentioning dog trainers will do the same thing over and over again, and maybe they get results, so they keep doing it. But, you know, you can't become complacent, because that's when, you know, shit hits the fan. You know, you were saying, you know, whenever I feel good, you know, like, yes, I'm awesome. Yeah. I've done enough things in my life where when I feel that way, I get paranoia. I'm like, fuck, what's happening? And it happened to me. It happened to me recently. I got to tell you, so hats off to you. It's so weird nowadays in 2021 that no matter what the fuck you do, you got to be like this TV personality online and shit. It's like, you're not a fucking plumber unless you're on Instagram twisting 100%. A wrench on video. It's insane. So I got I adopted my dog 3 weeks ago, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to put out some instructional videos because this lady wanted me to forward my client's personal information as like a reference. Even though I have good reviews and stuff like that, she wanted to talk to someone. I was like, okay. Sure. Well, I don't have any really videos. I have some before and after, some stingy ass before and after videos, but you know, I don't have any videos of myself training. So who am I inspired by? David the Dog Trainer. So I'm watching his videos, and I'm just like, all right. Camera goes on, and I instantly like, and it's just me, my friend, and my dog. Yeah. So that was about 2 weeks ago. So I shot this, and I put it up for one day, took it right down.
Oh, man. You got to leave it up.
No, fuck that.
Leave it up.
No, but listen to this. So the other thing.
Dude, I got some cringy videos out there. I'll have to dig some up. And I'm sure there's some on YouTube that I'm like, oh, God. Or there was days I remember Josh and I would film shit. And like, I would just be in a mood or something, just like not feeling it. And we'd film it, and we'd turn off the camera and be like, fuck it, it's fine. Fuck it, just put it up. Yeah. Those are the ones I just didn't watch back. I was just like, I don't want to watch it.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the problems too, is I watched all the videos back.
Yeah, I do that a lot too.
And I'm like, man, the shit I was saying was just absolute verbal diarrhea. It didn't even connect to any of the important points. And then the very next day after I shot these videos, I watched that Michael Ellis 3-hour video finally. Watched the whole thing. Man. Then I rewatched my videos. I was like, fuck, I'm doing all this shit wrong. Like, so, especially overshadow. I noticed that every time I asked my dog to go to the bed, I said bed while simultaneously pointing to it. You know. I had like, I don't know what's wrong with my hands, but I think when I train dogs, I think I have to like tape my arm to the side of my waist.
Yeah. You know what's funny is all of those little details like that, like from like an actual training standpoint here, I do all of those things, right? Like when I ask my dogs commands and stuff, like it's very like loosey-goosey, like bed, come here, this, you know what I mean? Like I'm not all super formal like I am in the training sessions. I think the important thing is just knowing how to turn it on and off so that when you're working with dogs that are earlier in the programs, it's clear. You know what I mean? Because later on, once your dog knows everything, and once I've confirmed, the dog knows the command without all of that help. The dog knows the e-collar. The dog knows all this kind of stuff. If you start combining things and doing overshadowing, the dog's going to get the point still. You know, they're going to understand that picture in this context of this bed, right? When I go over and do this, it means to get onto it and stay there, right? The important thing is when you're working with a new dog that doesn't know it, if you're doing all of those different things, they're never going to pick up the individual pieces of that puzzle, right? They're just going to know it as that combination of stuff. Right. But yeah, it's super hard habit to break.
And in that Michael Ellis video, he explains too. He's like, you know, if you give a physical prompt and a verbal prompt at the same time, dogs will always follow the physical prompt. Yep. So I noticed in one particular area, especially one customer that I was telling you that had the smallest living room I've ever trained a dog in. It's a German Shepherd, really smart 2-year-old. Nothing but mental energy. started to pick up on every little body language, and we noticed that this dog was not trained to the verbal.
Yeah.
He was trained to body language.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be our next session, is working and that was just recent. I was like,
Yeah.
fuck.
There was a dog trainer that I follow on Instagram. I don't even remember what their page is called, but she posted something like it's called like the down challenge or something like that. And she's like, you think your dog knows how to down? She's like, well, check this out. And then she put a video of her, like her laying down on the floor with the dog behind her. And she's like, has the camera like this on the dog. And she's like, down. And then you see the dog lay down back there. And then she posted another one of her like sitting in a chair with the dog like off to the side or something. She's like, down. And the dog laid down. And she's like, if you think your dog knows down, she's like, change the picture, generalize the command, do different things. And it's hilarious because she's 100% correct, right? Dogs know that picture of us standing next to them and saying down, right?
Yeah.
So when you sit in a chair and give those commands, completely different. Or this is another great example of showing how I did not generalize my dog's commands well enough. I went to a Gary Wilkes seminar in Indiana one time, and I took Vinny there with me. And, you know, I had a working spot, and, you know, at the time, like this was kind of peak ego of mine where I'm just like, fuck these people, you know, like my dog's way better behaved than all theirs, this, that, you know, whatever. So I bring Vinny in. And because like none of the dogs there had any food drive, I was like, listen, like I got a dog out in the car right now. He's got some food drive if you want to work him. And he's like, all right, cool. So he starts working him and everything's going well. And then Gary, like he's an old guy. He loves to sit on the floor cross-legged all the time and train dogs. That's like his thing. So he sits on the floor and then he's working the down command with Vinny. And he's like, oh, does he know how to stand up? I was like, does he know how to stand up? Yeah, he knows how to stand up, right? I was like, stay is the command, whatever, German for stand, right? Mm-hmm. And he sits there and he tells Vinny it like probably like 4 or 5 times, and Vinny just like looks at him like, the fuck are you talking about?
Oh.
And I'm sitting there like, oh. I was like so confident going into it. But it's because I never generalized the command of fucking sitting down because I was standing right next to Gary and I said it standing and then Vinny stood up, right? And I was like, well, this just goes to show I didn't generalize these commands well enough, right? Super funny. Wow. Michael Ellis has I don't remember if it was in that or if it was a side video that I watched of his, but he had a really great point of the overshadowing where he was working change of positions. You know, his dog's far away from him. He's working sit down stand from a distance. Mm-hmm. And he's doing it. And he started realizing as he was doing it, he was making all these weird neck motions, right? Like he was like sit down, you know, like whatever, like moving his neck in a different way. And somebody pointed out, they're like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? You know, you stop doing the neck motions. And Michael stopped doing the neck motions and just started giving just the commands, and the dog didn't do it. Fuck. Right? Yeah. Same deal. And he started realizing, cueing off of my physical, right? Yep. I have had so many people in the past argue with me about the overshadowing concept of like, it's not real. They can, you know, you have to do them at the same time or this or that. One of the common ones is the no marker. I always say space out the no and the correction, right? I've had trainers before, like multiple trainers, go, no, you can do it at the same time and the dog will still make the correlation about what that word is. And I'm just like, it's not how it works. It's not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen.
Well, it's kind of hard to listen to anything someone's saying when you're, you know, getting punched in the stomach. Not that a e-collar correction is a punch to the stomach, but it's hard to listen and be focused on verbal when you're feeling the correction at the same time.
Good point. Yeah. I mean, looking at it from a human standpoint, right? If somebody's saying something and like, Josh, sit. Sit.
You're just like poking me on.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It's a funny concept, though.
I'm just going to comply until you stop poking me.
Yeah. So, really interesting concepts. So that was the power of training with food or advanced concepts of motivation?
Power training with food.
Yeah. How many times have you watched that one so far?
Twice.
Just one? Twice? That was, so the power of training dogs for new trainers out there, the power of training dogs with food is one of the very first pieces of anything dog training related that I ever watched. The guy I used to work for gave it to me. He's like, you have to watch this, right? I sat home, I watched it with a fucking notebook probably like 5 times. Just like writing shit down. Yep. I'm sure I still have the notes somewhere. But that is one of the just most technically important videos I think you could watch as a trainer. I'm sure there's other things out there, but the way that he breaks the information down of how to scientifically be correct about the way you're utilizing motivation, the way you're utilizing markers, the way your timing is with giving commands and stuff like that. It's just, oh my God, it's literally like a college course in a 3-hour video. I mean, everything I do right now to some degree, I would equate to that DVD teaching me the appropriate way to do things. And I think that was one of the biggest learning curves that I had. Was when I watched that, I feel like I went from like, if this is the timeline, I feel like I went from here to here immediately after watching that, because I started noticing as I would go to other seminars or work with other trainers, a lot of the details that I learned in that DVD, they were clueless to, right? They were doing things out of order. They were having bad timing with stuff, and they didn't understand the importance of those things. And you realize once you do it, how important those things are, you know? So that's a great one. So you enjoyed that, I'm assuming?
It's just fundamentally sound. It's so easy to be attracted to the cool stuff, the shit that looks cool,
Sure.
and whatnot, or like just the loud horns, online and whatnot. People who are just not showing the process and stuff, and just showing the end result. But that was some fundamentals for you.
Yeah.
And after I watched it twice in one day.
Yeah.
And the very next day, I deleted my videos.
Oh.
That's what. So I shot the video.
Yeah.
The very next day.
Oh, you deleted those videos, the ones you made.
I shot my videos with my dog. The very next day, I watched that twice. The very next day, I deleted my videos.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck.
That was a fun.
I got to do this again.
It was a fun time in dog training. When I first started getting started, we were really into the competitive side of things and all the Michael Ellis system and everything. And man, I remember, you want to talk like motivation of like working your own dogs and like learning. I would go and I would work. At the time, it was kind of an overlap. I was working in a factory and I was going as like a client essentially and just kind of hanging out for a couple hours every single night. And then I started working there while still kind of being like a client. And every single night after I worked, I remember just going home and just like wanting to train my dog for like 2 hours, and like this, I just had Vera at the time and she was very food motivated, luckily. But like you, when you're doing that type of training, you can't train, you could definitely easily overtrain your dog, right? Where at the point they're burnt out on it.
Oh yeah.
And they're not just retaining the information. They're not motivated anymore.
Yeah.
And I remember just being there like, come on, let's do just a couple more reps. Let's do a couple more reps. Just because it was so much fun and like watching the gears turn and watching it click and, for both her as well as me, it was so exciting. I remember.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. That was a cool feeling to be that inspired to like learn and like work my own dogs and stuff. And it's something I try to strive for still. And I say like from a business standpoint, I think I try to keep the motivation alive or the fire alive to continue learning for myself. Through shifting my focus throughout the company. Because like now we have all sorts of different things, right? It's not just training my personal dogs. It's not doing competition work. It's not doing one-on-ones. It's not board and trains. It's not daycare. It's boarding. It's any of those things. And I could like on a quarterly basis or whatever, shift my focus from one to the other, to the other, to the other, to continue trying to improve or do that thing better and learn more about it, right? And I find that all the time is as I start getting, I don't want to say bored, but like complacent with one of them, I'll just shift to another that I hadn't had as much focus on, that maybe when I wasn't focusing on it, I would have noticed a bunch of things that I want to change, and I'll start experimenting there. And that kind of keeps that fire alive a lot for me, I think. Yeah.
So what's like I feel like the competitive world, protection training, I'm in the obedience world. I feel like that's just a far off planet for me right now that hopefully one day I'll get to. What is the biggest difference in those two worlds, like that you initially noticed?
The ego. I mean, honestly, like, so a lot of the people that are involved in competition dog training or protection dog training, they are very much of the mindset of like, if you're not doing things this way and if you're not having this kind of control and level of training and stuff like with your own personal dogs, you're not qualified to do it anywhere else, another aspect, as opposed to losing sight of it's a different avenue, right? Like even though you're really good at this kind of training and you may be able to teach all these crazy complicated behaviors, you don't necessarily understand the lifestyle side of pet dog training. Because no matter what, those types of people, they're very invested in their dogs, right? They train their dogs, like I was just saying, like 2 hours a day. They're doing all this protection stuff. They're driving and doing competitions and stuff like that. But that's not the life that our clients are going to be living with their dogs, right? So it's the lifestyle changes of now that I'm not involved in that kind of stuff. I see owning a Malinois and knowing all of the things I need to do in my day-to-day to have a successful pet dog household with him. And it has nothing to do with the games of tug and the ball that I'm playing with him and the protection training and the 2 hours of training and stuff like that. It's about how I'm living with him and how I'm interacting with him and how I'm fulfilling him that way, So that's one of the biggest differences. yeah, I mean, there's not much outside. I mean, it's still just training, right? Like I had a phone call with a client yesterday, and we were talking about, she's like, I have a working breed. They need a job, so I'm considering getting into, she had used protection training as an example, like I was thinking about doing this to give my job a job. What's your opinion on that? I was like, listen, one, I don't think people need protection dogs. I don't think we need to be teaching dogs how to bite better right now, right? And there's a lot of argument with that of like, well, if you're giving them the outlet to do it here, they're going to be less likely to do it elsewhere. I just don't think it's a great idea to put the dog into that state of mind necessarily. And I think, and we had this conversation with Michelle, the last podcast we were on, I think that if you're a trainer and you have 100% complete control over your dog, you can get away with it. But I think from a general pet dog standpoint and our clients and stuff like that, I don't think that they have even close to the level of control over their dogs that trainers do. So I don't think that you should be putting them in that position because of that, But I started talking to her and I was like, listen, like, everybody gets caught up on the dog needs a job kind of situation. But what is a job? Let's look at that, right? Let's take a police dog, for example. That's sniffing drugs or apprehending suspects or tracking through the woods or any of those types of things. And what is that? Why is that job so important to that dog? It's not because of the physical thing the dog is doing. It's because of the mental stimulation it's providing, right? When the dog is working, right, they're using their brain, they're problem solving, they're being physically and mentally engaged, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, cool. So why does it need to be protection training? Why does it need to be something complicated? Why can't it just be general training in the house, responding to commands, using their brain to problem solve, going to their bed from the other room, or et cetera, right? Like, why does it need to be something so complicated as opposed to just understanding that a dog's job is being a good member of your family, Yeah.
A symbiotic companion.
Yeah. So it's the same from that standpoint. It's different from the standpoint of there's a lot more intricacies that go into the competitive world or the protection world if you want to do it correctly, So I think that the things that can be learned from a trainer standpoint are, if you're teaching high-end behaviors, you need to have a higher caliber of training, right? If you're just a sloppy e-collar training that's teaching everything with pressure and stuff like that, you're never going to understand how to teach the dog to, you see these videos of dogs going on these obstacle courses and climbing over ropes and going up ladders and, retrieving items or reverse grabbing something and going and taking it and putting it over here or cast anything, right? You need to have a deeper understanding of learning theory in order to do those types of things,
I think it's, a case of different strokes for different folks, but I don't know this for sure, but I'm just assuming at this point where I'm at that you'd probably, as you mentioned, needing to have control over your dog. If you are going to do that, I would assume that you'd need a very solid obedience foundation.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the ability to really shut it off if you need to, And I still am a believer that, all the protection training I did with Vinny when I first got him, not like he's not by any means a dangerous dog or anything, but like I do think that definitely made him a more combative dog, in situations when push comes to shove, because what you're doing when you're training protection work is you're teaching a dog to push back on you when you're creating conflict with them, right? Or whoever the person is that's doing the protection training, right? So I do think that it definitely made him a more confident dog, not necessarily from the good standpoint of not scared of things, but confident from the standpoint of pushy, with new people and stuff like that. So I think it's an interesting world. And I think it's something, it's important to learn about, if you're a trainer. And there's a ton of different ways to do protection training as well. I mean, you can get into all the different style of, Michael Ellis is all about making the dog enjoy the process and building them up and creating that confident, stable dog through the tug work and transitioning to the bite work and all of that kind of stuff, where a lot of the old school protection training you could look at, it's no different than like new school training versus old school training from like motivation and like corrections and stuff like that. A lot of the old school protection training was they called it like box work, right? So they would chain the dog up on a box and essentially antagonize the shit out of them until the dog started lighting up, and then they would stick something in front of them for him to bite, So, again, but that's the way it was done, and they had confident and stable enough dogs where they weren't really creating problems doing that. But again, if you look at like, okay, cool, I'm biologically fulfilling the dog through doing protection training or whatever. It's like, if you're doing training like that, no, you're teaching the dog to solve problems with their mouth, right? Which I just don't think is a great idea,
You got to set them up for success.
Yeah.
And of course, when shit hits the fan, it's always the dog's fault, right?
For sure. Yeah. So
I think that was just how you like put that into context for her, or that what is a job for your dog. I've never really heard anyone explain it like that, and that's such a good way to think about it, because you're right. There's like some misconception that we have to do something with the dog has to be doing something at all times. It's like, well, just basic obedience is literally something. It's something your dog is doing.
Yeah.
That is like a mental stimulation.
I've seen clients before even use it almost as an excuse of like, oh, he just, my dog's just giving me all these problems. He just needs a job. If only he was like a police canine or something, to the point of like, it's impossible for me to provide a quote unquote job for my dog to be successful.
Yeah.
Right. It's pretty ridiculous.
It's fun. I'm thinking now, we were talking about that Dale Carnegie book, How to Make People Like You and Influence Others.
How to win friends and influence people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
you should read that, Josh. Have you read that?
I haven't read that.
Oh, great fucking book.
he talks about, as just like a foundational thing to understand about people, is that what everyone wants, the first and foremost thing, is to feel important.
Yeah.
Which gives you purpose. And that's what happens with our dogs. They have purpose when they are mentally stimulated. I think it gives them a reason to wake up and do things. You see all that free feeding and stuff like that. That just completely takes away all purpose in life.
Yeah.
If you don't have to work for your food, why would you have a pack drive? If you're constantly safe and spoon fed, why would you have to be, why would you have to do your part in that pack?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, some of these dogs out there and that's why, with the Caesar books and stuff that we read, he talks a lot about like celebrities and stuff that have dogs and how many issues they have, which those dogs, Paris Hilton's dogs probably have everything under the moon, given to them, right? And we equate that to happiness and what's going to fulfill the dog. And we see so many issues still because of that, right? And especially now, people are so willing to dump thousands and thousands and thousands of money or of dollars into their dog for toys, treats, food, this, that, training, boarding, the fucking rooms at the board. Have you seen these boarding facilities that they have like suites that you can get that have like TVs and couches and stuff in them and stuff?
Yeah.
Insane, right? But we're so willing to dump all this money into the dog thinking that's going to make them happy, where I bet you if a dog's got separation anxiety, it don't matter if you stick them in a crate or if you stick them in that suite or wherever, they're still going to have those same problems because it's not doing anything to make them any better. So
That's true.
And they have nothing else to think about.
Yeah.
Other than being anxious.
Yeah. So, and it's a hard balance, right? I get it. Like I said, when I get home from working long shifts, I don't want to do anything with my dogs, but we have to figure out ways to incorporate that job or that work into our life where it's not creating a ton of extra stress for us or extra things that we need to do, but we're still fulfilling the dog. And that's something I really have tried to strive for with my training programs, is to make those training programs as easy as possible for people to follow along with and maintain long term while still providing what the dog needs, and that is the forever struggle, where those are the things where, like we were talking about, where, everything's good, then suddenly roadblock, everything's good, then suddenly roadblock. That's the thing where I feel like I'm constantly trying to evolve it to fit those individual needs of, can I, originally it was, how do I make it as easy as possible for the owner? Then it's like, okay, cool. How do I make it as easy as possible for the owner while fulfilling the dog? Then it's like, how do I make the program as easy as possible for the owner while still providing enough complexity that it motivates the owner to want to do more with the dog, right? And it motivates them to not want to do just the easiest route possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of where I'm at right now with my training programs, is we have a good grasp of, here's our program of how we get from point A to point B, and this is how we make sure the clients are successful, et cetera, et cetera. But now I want to give the owners that same sense of motivation that I had when I first started training my dogs. Maybe not as intensely, because I have a very obsessive personality about things and not everybody is like that, right? But I want them to really feel like they're involved in it. And if you look at the way we humanize things and all of the different things we want to do with our dogs nowadays, I think people have that in them. I think it just needs to be channeled, right? As opposed to them realizing this, and this is going to give the dog the fulfillment, and taking them to all these different places is going to do it. It's actually accomplished through this, right? Whether it's training or hiking or any of those types of things,
So step 1, get a read. Step 2, simplify.
Yeah.
Get a read on where the person is, how difficult they perceive things, and simplify.
Yeah.
I think also from a business standpoint, that's really smart because when I was a new salesman selling food, right, I would hear, hey, go check out this place and try to get their business. So what I do is I would just spend hours and hours and days and just have everything real tight. And I would go in there with all these ideas. And before you knew it, I walked out of there and I realized I didn't have a reason to go back.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, but there was a saying, in sales, don't blow your load, in one session.
Yeah.
So I think financially, not only is it helpful, but it's also financially beneficial as well to not give away the farm.
Sure.
So it goes both ways. Not that we're
from a
in
business
it to be millionaires
standpoint,
or anything.
listen, like if you got time to do it, right, or you're trying to do a 10-session program or something like that, you need to fill those 10 sessions with things to do. Yeah. So if you tell them everything that first one. All right, we're recording again. So we had to take a quick break there. Our disk storage ran up on the computer, and we lost probably 5 minutes of the podcast. So I apologize about that. We had some interest. What were you guys even talking about anyways? Because I was like, at that point, you guys were chatting, and I was like in panic mode, like, holy shit, did we lose everything? I legitimately, I'll be honest, for a second there, I thought we lost like almost everything, and we were like just about an hour in, and I was about to freak the fuck out.
Well, Josh said that there were 2 types of clients, dog training clients, where one comes back to you over and over again, and then 2.
Oh, we missed that whole point too. Yeah. I
Oh,
saw
no.
the trained, happy clients, right, versus the engaged ones that love the process that continue and send out. So anyways, wrapping up what I was talking about where it cut there. So obviously when you have 10 sessions that you need to fill with time, right, if you could slow it down a little bit and you could break those pieces down into digestible steps, you're going to keep them more engaged along the way, right? Where if I tell them everything we're going to do session 1 and then the following 9 sessions that we do, we're just fine tuning those things, at some point I'm going to lose them, right? At some point I'm going to lose them because they're going to be like, there's nothing new happening. It's just little details that are very, right here that kind of go over your head a little bit and stuff like that. Where if every single session we're going into something new, we're going to something new, we're going to something new, it's going to be exciting and engaging each time they come back, which is where you correlated into the 2 types of clients.
Yes.
What are the 2 types of clients again, Josh?
Okay.
Break it down for me.
All right. I'm leaving that in the video. I hope you know.
Death Row Records.
Yeah, Death Row.
I got no move.
For everyone listening, he just did a little break dance for us.
Break
It was
dance.
beautiful.
For the Spotify crowd.
Yeah. So there's 2. I think there's 2 types of successful clients. So the first one is you train their dog successfully. They come back with their future dogs, saying, "Oh, David trained my dog. Like he did such a good job." They keep up with it, but they don't know. They're just doing enough to keep the dog right. But that works for them. Then there's the other one, like I said, Sydney, Ginger's owner, which is a dog he trained I think it's about 3 years ago now.
It's been a while.
Yeah, but it's like once a week she's like tagging Miracle Canine and putting she's just killing it all the time.
That's
and
beautiful.
you can tell that when she gets another dog, she's going to train because she's into it and she knows exactly what she's doing, and for the rest of her life she's going to be successful at being a dog owner. So there's the people that really grasp onto it and make it almost their lifestyle. Maybe not at becoming a trainer, but
No, having a well-behaved dog is a lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the people that do take things from it, but still come to you, and it's not really their thing, but they appreciate it.
I think another important point of that is, our best advertisement that we have are the people out there with dogs that are behaving. Because I know when I go out in public, for example, like when I'm not wearing Miracle Canine shit all the time, stuff like that. I just look like Joe Schmo walking my dogs. When my dogs are really well behaved and I'm doing downstays in the park or this or that, everybody is looking as they go by like, whoa, because nobody sees dogs that behave like that, right? And I would say a decent amount of people come up and ask, like, wow, that's a really well-behaved dog. I wish my dog can do that, et cetera, et cetera. And the more people you have out there that are doing that, the better it's going to be, right? That is your best advertisement. It's great when they refer, people that, the first clients, the ones that are just happy and the dog may not be perfect or anything, but they learn stuff and they're going to bring their second dog back to you and they're going to refer their mom to you and et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Those people are great, but they're not getting that broad reach of everybody. People they don't even know potentially being, people coming in, because they're still going to refer their mom to you, right? And they're still going to bring their second dog to you and stuff. But there also is that potential of when they're out and about getting recognized, know?
Yeah. Is that your goal, David? National? I mean,
so I don't, my goal is to help as many people as possible in the best way possible, right? So my goal is not to have this national business necessarily. If it turns into that, that's great. But I want to be able to provide the type of relationship and support that I felt like I did when it was just me doing it and I was just 100% engaged with my clients, but to be able to scale that mentality, right? And obviously I want to grow a big ass business, which is great, right? And I want to make a bunch of money and do all this kind of stuff, right? Those are all cool things, but the primary focus is helping as many people as possible and providing a high level of training to as many people as possible where, they don't need to, like, I don't know, like and this is kind of like a, kind of chip on the shoulder kind of thing, but like we get so many fucking people that come in that have been to multiple other trainers before. So many, right? And it's kind of like an ego brag to some trainers of like, psh, they've been to 4 trainers before and nobody could help them and they found me. But in my mind, it's just like, we're just watering down the industry and just killing people's perception of what training can accomplish. Right.
Or I've been taking my one dog Percy to the same trainer for 10.5 years.
Yeah.
She's great.
That's a good one too. Yeah. Right.
10.5 fucking years.
Yeah. It's like at some point, it's like, come on, man, like I don't like that. Like I want to expose that. I don't want people to have spent, because that also means that person has spent $6,000 on this fucking dog, $7,000 on this dog and still not found help with what they're looking for, And listen, I don't know. I'm sure there's been clients of mine that have went to another trainer. I'm sure it's happened, but I'll be honest, I'm not aware of it if it is happening, right? And listen, I don't know if these other people are aware of it or not when it's happening to them either, but like, I like to think the dogs we're training, we've developed relationships good enough with them where if they're having issues with something, they know that they can come back to us. They know that they don't need to seek somebody else out, right? And we're going to give them our honest to God opinion and help and be there for them and coach them through these things without them feeling like this person let me down, because also that's what's going on in their minds when they go to that second trainer and that third trainer. It's like this first person kind of let me down, and that's got to be a fucking awful feeling as a trainer to feel like, you let one of your clients down like that.
If you give a shit, yeah. Oh God, yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's what I want. I don't want to get so big that starts happening, right? I want to ingrain that mentality into my staff where they care that much, right? They have that purpose of this is the goal, right? This is the North Star we're trying to hit right now, and we'll grow as slow or as fast as that allows us to do,
Yeah. So basically you'll take as much success and growth as will come to you, but not without losing sight of why you even got into it in the first place.
Yeah. And listen, I mean, here's the thing. Like, as you grow, it gets easy to lose sight of that sometimes, right? There's times that I need to check myself where it's like, David, what the fuck you doing? And like, you got to focus in on this or whatever. You need to put some emphasis on this, but I at least try to check my ego enough where I don't let that become like a habit, But yeah, that's the goal, is to be able to provide that. Right. And it's cool. Like we were talking about with the dogs, dogs need to feel like they have a purpose. Right. Isn't it interesting?
Everyone does.
Yeah. Isn't it really, really interesting when you look at, there's a lot of talk out there. I feel like there's, in today's economic society, there's a lot of talk of like, it's kind of the workers against the bosses or the managers, the owners, the CEOs kind of thing. You know what I mean? Isn't it really interesting, whether that's right or wrong or whatever it is, it's interesting how there's so many people out there that will work for maybe not a lot, but because they care so much, they'll continue to put their all into it, even though it doesn't benefit them at all, or it doesn't benefit them anywhere near to the scale that it benefits other people sometimes, right? But it's because it gives them that purpose, right? Their work that they're doing, they're proud of it, right? And because they're proud of it, they'll keep working harder and harder and harder, no matter what the money situation is, or no matter what the ownership is, or whatever it may be. And I love that. I really want to, to continue. And this is the business goal side of things. I want to continue ingraining that, but also making sure, or at least trying to make sure as best as I can, that nobody feels like they're being taken advantage of. Right. So instilling that mentality while still feeling like they're still getting their piece of the cake. So
one of my biggest mantras is price is what you pay, value is what you get. So, and I apply that to a lot of things in life too, especially with jobs and salary, to your point, might not be making a lot of money, but loves his life, right?
Yeah.
Salary is what you're being paid, but what kind of life does that, what's the value in it? What kind of life are you leading making that money?
Sure.
I was making $80K, which was more than I've ever made in my life.
Yeah.
And didn't realize it, but $20K was going out the back door just to do the job.
Sure.
Didn't realize that, was getting that loss, but I was working for someone else, eye open, eye shut, I kid you not, 7 days a week, and was so miserable, making the same amount of money.
Sure.
I mean, making the most money I've ever made in my life, and I couldn't be less happy. I couldn't be less in touch with myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that.
And it's crazy, too, when you do the math, sometimes, you just have people who are naturally just want to bargain.
Yeah.
Those people aside, you talk to a lot of people, I could say $20 an hour, and people are like, wow.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's two things. One, it sucks that there's so many people doing a shitty job out there, and the other thing, too, is people don't realize the value in it. Well, my training is going to last a lifetime of your dog. Yeah. So you go to the salon every 3 months and spend $200.
Yeah.
But you don't want to spend $20+ an hour on something that's going to last the lifetime of your dog.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I remember having that conversation with myself one time. I was in the middle of being this was kind of in my transitional period from being like really cheap and like just trying to attract as much business as possible to like, okay, cool, like we're too busy, we need to start increasing prices and stuff. And I remember asking myself the question of, because up until that point I was looking around, I was like, oh, this person's charging X amount of dollars per hour, this person's charging X amount of dollars per hour, and I was trying to validate and justify like why people were charging some things and other people were charging other things. And instead I remember looking at and asking myself the question, take reactivity for example or whatever, right? How much is it worth it? Forget sessions, forget equipment, forget whatever. How much is it worth it for this person to have that problem resolved? Right? If you could say, listen, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do to fix the problem, but if I can just take away that problem that you're having with your dog, how much would you pay to have that problem taken away? Right? $800, $1,000, $3,000, whatever, just put a number on it. And then you put that number on it and you look at, okay, cool. That's how much whatever program that I'm going to create, whether it's 3 sessions or 10 sessions or a board and train or 6 weeks or this or that, that's how much that's worth. Not a per hour cost or a this cost or a this cost. I remember seeing a video. This is a graphic design video. There's some trainer. I think Jake sent it to me, actually. It was a really cool video. And he's breaking down cost per hour, value of work, this, that, and he's looking at it, he's like, if somebody contacts you and pays and needs a logo design for their company, right? He's like, I could tell, and they ask, how much is it going to cost, right? And you tell them the cost and they're like, oh my gosh, well, how many hours is it going to take you, right? And he's like, I don't ever answer that question in those cases because here's the thing. Why does it matter? If I'm able to create a logo that you love and you're going to use to build your brand and you're going to use it for your company and it's going to solve all of your needs and this and that, if I get it done in 1 hour, does that make it worth less money than if it took me 30 hours to create it? No, right? So you need to price based on what the value is you're providing, right? How much does that person need that thing and how much are they willing to pay for that thing, right? Or for that solution. And I remember that video kind of sparked that conversation about like, okay, cool, we got to look at, what am I providing for people and how much is that solution worth? And forget the sessions, forget the hourly rate, all that kind of stuff,
Not to mention that just so discounts all the work that went into getting that good at that craft.
Sure.
That's education is everything.
Yeah. I mean, no different than the learning curve we were talking about when you're getting started in dog training. Even though I haven't been doing it as long as some people, that doesn't make me less valuable than those people that have been doing it 25 years as long as I'm providing the same service for them, So yeah, really, really interesting ideas and stuff when it comes to a lot of that kind of stuff. So, all right, you got a list over there, some talking points. You got any? Well, do you have anything else to add to what we were just talking about? And if not, what kind of shit you got over there to talk about?
Really quickly before we get off the subject, I'm just wondering, Josh, you took your headphones off? Sorry to catch you with your pants down there. Not literally, people.
Not literally.
Do you hit those issues in media? Like in the media world, it seems like, really quickly to reiterate, you have either the guy who's like, I don't care how much it is, just go ahead and charge it. You have the person that it's $10 an hour. Oh, wow, that's a lot. Or you have the person, no matter what you say, they're going to try to get a 10% discount and buy it anyway. Like those people, what kind of?
Yeah, it's definitely quite the same. I mean,
really,
because I work with a lot of, like right now, like restaurants.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 2020 was not the best year for
how much
food products.
How much I get cheaper.
Yeah.
I get cheaper somewhere else.
Yeah, it's just and I have to try to take that into consideration too. It's like it's a lot of mom and pop places, like they got hit pretty hard. Like my one friend's Aaliyah, they're just opening back up here on the 9th. They've been closed since Thanksgiving, and I'm going over there on the 8th, and I was like, man, because they were always good clients, so I was just like, hey man.
Yeah,
I'll do it for basically nothing. And he was like, no, I have to pay you something. I was like, all right, but I'm not going to charge you a lot. But I try to keep in consideration on who I'm working with. Like when I get the bigger corporate things, like, okay, you came to me, like obviously you want my work, blah, blah, blah. And I don't have like a set price. I usually go, like you were kind of saying, like, what's it worth to you?
Yeah.
You know
your clientele.
Yeah, exactly. So I just go per person.
Gotcha.
Usually.
Like water, flexible.
Yeah. Yes. And then I wanted to go before, because you were talking about like watering down like the training scene, all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
So what do you guys think about like PetSmart and their little training programs they do?
I fucking hate it.
This is a good point though. So we talked about this yesterday. We were talking about puppies. Remember, I said you have two ways you can look at training a puppy, right?
Yeah.
So PetSmart, where they go wrong is it's marketed as if it's going to be this training program that's going to achieve all of these things that you want for your dog, right?
Yeah.
It's not doing anything bad by any means, right? It's not going to hurt the dog going to PetSmart training.
Yeah.
But since it's marketed as such, we have people that contact us and say, I did puppy training with my dog, and now they don't remember anything anymore, or they don't do this. And it's like, okay, cool. Was it intended to be that, right? It was intended to be a fun way to bond with your dog and to create some structure and to start showing you how some of the learning process works, right? If you're going to do puppy training with your dog, it has to be done one of two ways, right? Way number one is if you're going to break it into two segments, right? And you're going to do something similar to what PetSmart offers, and you're going to have a 5 or a 6 session course where it's like, listen, this is just going to be a fun, teach your dog to learn, build some engagement, build some motivation. Socialize, right? Teach you some do's and don'ts, but it is not going to be real life training. Plain and simple, right? That is not the goal of this right now. You will have to do training with the dog later on for that and advertise it as such, right? The other option, and what we choose to do at Miracle, is we offer a combination of the two where we have longer programs where we break down all of that stuff into the same program. So instead of it being 2 stages and me potentially running into the issue of somebody comes and does the puppy training, then they say, I don't feel like paying for the adult training. I'm just going to dip out. But still in the back of their mind, they're like, well, I trained my dog with Miracle Canine Training and they fucking suck or whatever. Yeah. Instead of running into that, we're going to work through all that stuff and then jump right into then the adult training and finishing things off. And that's why we have so few program options, is because if I'm going to train your dog, I'm going to train your dog, right? I'm not going to partially train your dog. It's we're going to take things start to finish and we're going to put your dog through the program, right? At least to where I'm comfortable in saying your issues are resolved and the dog has a foundation of training on it that should last you the lifetime of the dog, right?
Yeah.
So that's my issue with PetSmart is just that it's advertised as this end-all be-all training. And then they have at their fucking stores and stuff when you go in. It's the, we only do positive training because it's the best. So they're advertising as if their training is better than ours then as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's not only just this is puppy training. It's this is better than everybody else's training out there.
Yeah.
right?
It's funny because we went in a couple of weeks ago with we have a little cattle dog, and he has prong on.
Prong collar.
Oh wait, yeah, he had his prong on, and we were just sitting there. I mean, my girlfriend trained him. Like, she worked at Heights K9, but she wasn't a trainer, but she's picked up things. But
She's still there, right?
yeah, she's still there.
Oh,
Yeah, but he was just sitting there being chill, and then they came up like, "Oh, what a nice dog! Can I pet your dog?" Blah blah blah. And she's like, "No, you can't pet my dog. Whatever." And she's like, "Oh, okay."
This is a PetSmart employee?
Yeah, this is a PetSmart. We found out
Trainer.
the trainer.
Oh,
Yeah, and she's like, after she's trying to pet the dog that's chilling and not doing anything, she's like, "Oh, well, we do training classes here, so if you guys would ever want to do some training here, no,
Go away.
Yeah, our dog's fine. Which I guess I get it. That's probably how they try to hook people,
Yeah.
But it's our dog is already trained. I don't know. It was a really weird experience, and they were really pushy about it.
Yeah.
But it's just
I remember one time I used to, when I first got Vera and was kind of like a client, in training her.
Yeah.
And she had already had a very high level of training on her at this point. And I was doing, I was a part of this Facebook group called Pitbull Zen, right? And Pitbull Zen is a positive, it's ran by 2 positive only trainers in Cleveland, right? And they did meetups and walks and this and that. And at the time, I'm just new dog owner trying to get involved in stuff. And I remember going to it. And at the time, this is when I started learning a little more about dog training. And I was like, oh, these positive only trainers don't even know how good this dog is. And I remember going to one of the meetups and kind of showing off with her and stuff.
Yeah.
And the one trainer comes over and she's like, can I give your dog a treat? And I was just like, yeah, sure, whatever, So she literally gets on the floor and sat there with a handful of treats. And Vera's trying to fuck around and get those treats from her, obviously, because she's on the ground with these treats 6 inches away from her face. And she's sitting there. She's like, look. Yeah, okay, I'll give it to you now. You looked at me, right? It's she was doing it on purpose to try to discredit, oh, look at how annoying your dog is for these treats. It's ridiculous. It's just these positive. We need to do it one day. We need to do an entire positive only trainer podcast and just get a bunch of trainers on here that are balanced trainers and just talk about all the ridiculousness of it. I feel like I want to go on a ranting podcast about that one day.
I have a question for you, David. What is the most fucking ridiculous command you've ever heard of someone teaching? Because I showed
Command?
I showed you that that client thing that I showed you yesterday.
Oh,
And
yeah,
it was
yeah.
I taught the dog all the commands.
Yeah.
And one of the commands was walk.
Walk.
And
Walk is so in their context it wasn't, but walk actually used to be a command we used for contact healing, because we had to differentiate between contact healing and focused healing. So we would use heal for focused healing. We'd use walk for just a loose, you just have to touch me kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if there's, I don't think there's necessarily ridiculous commands out there. I think it's just I think people will say things are commands that are not commands, if that's what you're asking, right?
walk, stop, and go ahead. Those are the 3 I was like.
Yeah, stuff like that. I don't know if they're ridiculous necessarily. They're just not actually commands, right? Your dog doesn't actually know what these things are, right? Slow. A lot of people be slow. I tell my dog slow, and they slow back down in the heel position. I was like, well, if they were supposed to be in the heel position,
And
then
you
telling them
slowed down.
slow just means that you just told the dog to stop doing what they were doing and fix themselves. So you should have just used no or something. It's just unnecessary, right? We have a lot of colorful language we like to use with our dogs.
That's what I was going to say. Colorful language.
Yeah, I think you used that word before. That's where I got that.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of colorful language we'll use with our dogs that it's just unnecessary, and it doesn't actually have meaning to the dog. Where I would say, if I'm going to say anything or give any sort of command to my dog, I need to make sure I can clearly define what that means, right? So unless you could tell me what each individual command specifically means and how you're specifically going to enforce it, in my opinion, it's not a command.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Good.
I think even it just correlates with like when we had that discussion about the little button pushing. It's
button
like,
pushing.
yeah, they have
100%. Same
no
thing.
fucking clue.
They have no clue. It's not a clearly defined thing. It's not something the dog actually understands, nor is it something you can enforce, right? We had this conversation the other day at the facility. We were talking about service dogs, right? I'm going to fucking push some buttons right now. You ready for this?
Oh, boy.
So
Here we go.
I think that the majority of these anxiety service dogs out there are not real. I think they're not service dogs. I think they're emotional support animals, right?
What's the difference? What's the difference definitively?
Okay, so a service dog, what defines a service dog is a disabled handler and a dog that is performing a task for that disabled handler.
Okay.
So if you're not disabled, but your dog performs tasks, it's not a service dog. And if you're disabled, but the dog is not performing a task, it's not a service dog. So you have to have both of those two things. An emotional support animal is just a dog that the presence of the dog provides emotional support for you. And it has certain like housing rights and public access rights and stuff. There's differences between the two as far as that is concerned, right? But the disabled handler and the task are the two important things, right? So here's the thing. The anxiety is not why I don't think that the dog is a service dog, right? Like, listen, there are people out there that are anxious that need emotional support animals, right? So I'm not saying the disabled handler is not the real part. I'm saying the tasks the dog are performing are not real, right? For the most part. Let me caveat this because Krista had a very, very good point that she brought up the other day that made me reverse a little bit on my statement with it. But I think that the majority of these tasks that the owners are providing are not things the dog is aware of that they're doing, right? I think that these people probably have anxious episodes, right? They have panic attacks, whatever it may be, and then they just like the fact that their dog is there. That can kind of comfort them a little bit, right? Which is emotional support animal, right? That's not a service dog, right? So it shouldn't get the same allowances that service dogs get. Now, where Krista said, which I would agree with, is she pointed me towards, there was a trainer she followed that started teaching the dog to do a specific interrupting behavior off of triggers, off of certain things the owner would do when they got anxious. So she used the example of, I believe, tapping on the ground, like with her foot. I guess the person they were training this dog for, before they would have a panic attack, they would start getting anxious and tapping their foot on the ground like this, like really violently, right? So they started teaching the dog that when I do this, you have to come over and jump up and interrupt the behavior. And they literally, from what she told me, I didn't see the video, but she would show, tap on the foot, dog would immediately, boom, fly over and do it. Tap on the foot, dog would immediately fly over and do it. Okay, so now we have an anxious or a anxiety disabled person, and we have a dog performing a specific task that you could clearly outline to me and you can clearly enforce, right?
Yeah.
Boom, that's a service dog. That's what I said. I was like, you're right. I didn't think about that. That's a great example of it. Most people that have anxiety service dogs, that's not actually what they're doing.
Is that a tight spec? Is that a tight certification? Nothing really is, right?
It's very loose. Because like I said, what defines it is not any sort of certification or anything. It's those two factors, right? So you don't need any sort of like paperwork, or there's nobody out there that says, check, you have a service dog, right? Because legally, when you're out and about, the only thing they could ever even ask you is, is that a service dog, and what task are they providing for you? You know? So, interesting.
Yeah, I guess I never thought about that either.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of get iffy when someone says, you know, ESA or whatever. Like, but that definitely makes a lot of sense because it's just a cue, you know?
Yeah, it's something that's clearly trained. So, other points? Anything on that before we jump into the stuff you have on this list?
Back to PetSmart.
Yeah.
They just don't keep it real.
They don't keep it real. Keep it real, PetSmart.
They so dilute everything, you know? And one of the first couple things you're going to teach a dog is how to shake and like roll over and shit. Like all the trick training that, they do is just such BS, and I don't understand like
Functional commands.
It looks good. That's all it is, you know?
Yeah. Well, diving into my
got over
list. Yeah, I wanted to tell you about this session.
Let's hear it.
After I left you yesterday. So this is my first
This session was yesterday.
Yeah, right after I left you, 1 o'clock. I go in, it's an older couple with, unfortunately, an overweight 2-year-old Tennessee brindle tree dog. And
A Tennessee tree dog?
yeah,
Is that
like
an
a
actual
Tennessee
breed?
brindle. It's like a treeing dog.
Okay.
I had to Google it myself.
Yeah, I'm about to do that right
Yeah. Yeah, it just looks like, I don't know, like a bigger basset hound, like a big basset hound that is full, like completely brindle.
I see it. All right.
Let me see.
This kind of looks like Hobbs.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if that's what Hobbs is.
But this dog is about 15 pounds overweight. Very nice couple. But, you know,
Fucking Hobbs.
Yeah, it is.
the dog had no,
Thought he was
you know,
a mutt.
way to stimulate the dog. There, you know, it was untrained. So, you know,
Sure.
and it had a lot of pent up energy, which it would release via barking. And as we start to talk about it, she tells me that she had already worked with a trainer, and her trainer
Was it Miracle Canine Training?
no,
Hey.
fuck no. This trainer, who by the way was like Barbara Wilson. I was like, who the
Wilson.
fuck is that? Anyway, she said that the trainer told her that the reason the dog was barking outside and the way to barking at people outside and the way to stop it is to let the dog know that you see it.
But you see it?
Yeah. I was like, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, when the dog starts barking, you walk over and say, okay, baby, I see it.
All right.
And my facial expressions were uncontrollable,
Yeah.
but I said no.
It's not a thing.
So anyway, I go through explaining, self-stimulating, pent-up energy, stuff like that, and what the dog is actually seeing where, you know, it sees someone coming to the home.
Yeah.
And as the person walks past the home, it thinks that it has successfully repelled the person via barking.
Yep.
So, you know, I then demonstrated as the dog is still barking at me, and I just walked right up to the dog and stood right next to it and just shut up right away. So that was like, you know, I had their trust at that point. It was like, wow, he stopped barking right as soon as you walked up to him.
Yeah.
So then I start training the dog. I put it on a prong collar, and we start healing a little bit, and that's going well. So I have the parents, you know, do the same thing, take the leash back, and I start to introduce the sit with a little upward pressure on the leash, and the dog flips the F out, like starts just like making this loud. I thought this was going to be like the first time I got bit. 1, 2, 3. I thought this was going to be the one. I'm like, this dog's going to bite me.
Yeah.
And I had just finished telling, you know, yeah, all dogs bite. That's what they do. But this dog's not aggressive because that's what they thought.
Yeah.
So I put upward pressure on this prong collar with the leash, and this dog is flipping out, like twirling like it's Cirque du Soleil, like, and it's howling like bloody murder.
Yeah.
You're killing it.
Yeah, and I look over at the woman, and she might as well be watching like a murder. She's like making all these gasps and long story short, she ends up in like tears.
Yep.
Of course, the dog comes around because I'm not gonna let it off the hook in a sense. It's not hurt. I know that, but she doesn't, right? So I get to explaining, you know, what's going on, you know, why he's doing that. He's just doing that to get out of whatever he wants.
Yeah.
He's never that's never not worked for him.
Yeah.
So that's what he's doing.
Literally doing
But as you
anything.
see, but the cool thing about it is I was like, you know, as long as I don't get bit, even if I do get bit, I'm still gonna finish this session.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I'm like, man, this dog is gonna hate me. You know, this dog, once everything kicked in and they were like, wow, you know, it started sitting all of a sudden. This dog was so freaking happy and so comfortable. Once we were done with that training session, it couldn't have been happier.
Yeah.
But it's why I'm trying. One of the things, another mantra that I live by is, if anything worth doing is worth doing right.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm trying to just go slow and do everything right. But I understand some of the things that you were saying and where you're coming from, especially early on, where, fuck, this industry is so fucking diluted and people don't understand that the results of dog training should be relatively quick, you know, as far as working with the trainer one-on-one.
Yeah.
And that should last the lifetime of the dog. And people can't, and I understand why, can't do the math.
Sure. Yeah, totally. You know what's interesting about what you were just saying with the dog and freaking out with the prong collar and stuff like that is, do you get asked this ever? You know, does the prong collar, the e-collar, whatever, like, is it going to create more aggression? Right? Like, we'll see. Well, I guess you don't do a ton of behavioral modification work, obviously, but like, we'll get that very frequently as people will ask, you know, like, is the e-collar, you know, I've heard from somewhere, somebody told me the e-collar is going to make the dog more aggressive, right? Because it's going to create more fear or this or that or whatever it may be. And, you know, I always say it literally has nothing to do with that. It has to do with it exposes the real dog, right? When you start pushing back on the dog, it starts exposing the dog at its core. So this dog, for example, I know a prong collar is not like painful, right? From the extent of like, it hurts. It's uncomfortable, and that's the reason why it works, obviously. But it's not creating any sort of damage. It's not actually harming the dog at all or anything, right? But we'll see some dogs just like that are either fine and get it, right? Or we'll see the ones that when you first put it on them, they freak out like you're literally slaughtering them, right? Yep. Screaming, backflipping, alligator rolling on the ground, all this kind of stuff.
No pun intended, right?
Yeah, right. And all that has to do with is not that it's hurting the dog. It has to do with you are pushing back on the dog and you are eliminating all of those things the dog typically does, right? So a dog like this, likely in its past, anytime it didn't like something or wanted to do something else, it got away with throwing a minor version of that tantrum, right? Something small, right? That worked. It had accomplished what it was trying to accomplish, which is getting out of doing whatever it is that it wanted to do, right? Yeah. So when you push back and they try that and they realize that it doesn't work and you're not giving way to it, they try harder and they try harder and they try hard. Yeah, they turn up that volume, and you have to allow them to do that and realize that as much as you turn it up, it's not going to work still, right? So it's not creating more aggression, but sometimes we'll see things that look like it's creating more aggression. We'll see aggressive dogs we work with that the second we start the e-collar training or the prong collar training, they'll start trying to bite the fuck out of you over that kind of stuff, right? And get really intense, and to a point where the owner may know that the dog is aggressive, but it's like, oh my God, I've never seen that before. I need to stop, right? I need to hit the brakes because you're making it worse right now. But in actuality, it gets worse before it gets better because the dog's used to that working, so they have to try as hard as they're going to try, so they realize it doesn't work anymore. You know?
And I always explain the process of that too, where the dog is what he's doing is, or what she's doing is going through this bag of tricks that have always worked. And what happens is usually you've only seen the dog at this level, this low level, because it's worked instantly, and that's why we're going through this. But when they realize it doesn't work, they turn it up to the 200th percentile, right? But I like to explain, if I can, before or during, but afterward, I explain to this woman, what's happening. Usually as you achieve a training mindset or compliance, is you'll start to see that dog go through his bag of tricks, and he'll turn it up to that 200 percentile, and then it'll climax, and then all of a sudden he goes down. He'll make that, and I could tell now when they're making that last ditch effort. And it's so comforting too, because I recognize it now, and I'm like, oh sweet, oh here it is. This is that crazy one right here, and it's done. And now we're training a trainable dog.
And sometimes we'll see it'll go through like peaks and valleys where you'll get the big tantrum, then they'll chill out for a little bit, then they'll get their second wind, right? Then they'll chill out a little bit,
and then they get tired at the end,
and
then
they get tired,
and then they're assholes, and you got
yeah. And then by the second session though, usually with dogs like that, it's insane how much of a night and day difference we'll see. Like they're literally so easy after that once you've worked through all that fight. But you just got to get it. You got to get it out of their system. But to answer your question, I don't have people that specifically say aggression. Sure. But I will have people. I have very tight spiels for both the prong collar and the e-collar that I go through. Thank you, Mark Goldberg. Well, the fear is the same too, right? Will this e-collar make my dog more fearful, right? Where I always say it's not going to make them more fearful, but those fearful things they do, running away, getting scared, hiding, this and that, they're going to try those things extra hard too, because they're used to those fearful responses, those fearful impulses working as well, right? Just kind of the opposite end of the spectrum.
It feels good though. Like, I don't know if you guys watched Ace Ventura before, but sometimes I leave with those kind of situations and I walk out and I think of Ace Ventura. I'm like, I have exorcised the demon. I just walk out feeling like I just freed a soul.
Yeah, it's like you're performing an exorcist.
Exorcism,
That's hilarious. All right, what else you got on that list?
Told you about her. How do you feel about sitting at the door? This is just random. I don't teach sit at the door anymore.
Yeah. It's a good one.
And I want to hear your opinion about that, because initially I started to do, because a million books say that's how you start threshold training, is sitting at the door. But what I've noticed is that once you really want to focus on just threshold aside from the sit, it makes it a little bit harder on the customer, because they even when you say, okay, no more sit at the door, now I want to see the second that your dog crosses that threshold, I want it corrected and restart, right? But I feel like if you are, so that's one thing about it. It makes it just simplify it for the customer. But the other thing too is that if you rely on that sit at the door, then that second where you have your guard down, if you haven't put your dog in a sit, it runs out the door. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, let me caveat this by saying we do teach sitting or downing at the doorway, but not because I think it's the most important thing. So, second side of the equation here, right? So, I personally rarely ever make my personal dog sit at the door. They will do it, and I've taught them to do so, but I don't typically do it a whole lot, right? So I don't necessarily think it's the most necessary because I think a lot of people, the reason why there's so much emphasis put on sitting at a doorway, it's because we're trying to block the dog from doing something. If they sit at the doorway, they can't bolt through. If they sit at the doorway, they can't bolt through. I always say my goal is to be able to micromanage my dogs as little as possible. So because of that, I want to teach things as implieds, right? So I want to imply that you just can't go through the doorway because you're going to get corrected if I'm opening it and you try to charge through. Mm-hmm. What happens is, like you were saying, you don't get reliant on giving that sit command all the time or any of those types of things, right? I think that it's a nice drill to add in as a good way to proof the individual commands, whether it's a sit or a down.
Right.
That threshold creates so much arousal. So if I could proof a command at that threshold, that just means that I'm focusing the dog in even more, but I always start with making sure the dog doesn't rush through first, right? So I'll correct for that behavior. Once I have the dog waiting at the doorway, then I'll start adding in those secondary commands to just take it that step further, you know? But long term, I do not enforce it. Long term, I don't really care a whole lot about it. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, that's all I had. Yeah, just food for thought. I was thinking about that. I think about all little random ass things like that.
Yeah, it's a good one. What else you got?
You know, so you were talking on other podcasts a while back about just asshole trainers and just like the culture. And
Sure.
It seems in my experiences so far, I've only had 2 instances, one in person, which wasn't really that big of a deal, but one online, actually twice online, where I was just legitimately, innocently just asking a question about, you know, I don't have a problem challenging people just for the point of learning and to see their point of view. It's how you learn. But a couple times I asked people to kind of elaborate on their opinion, and it just turned into, well, you'll understand that one day when you go to dog training school and get your A, B, C, D, E, F, G, C, D, T. When have you... What was like have you experienced a lot of mean dog trainers and what was like your number one, like that you'll never forget? This dude was a dick.
I think this is almost, well, I mean, listen, the guy that I first worked for was an asshole dog trainer. Right. And I talk about him a lot and I think that I learned a lot from him, but also like, I have some bad memories of just experiences we had with him, which we've talked about in the past, right? I think as far as other trainers out there looking for help, I think it's one of 2 things. One, it's the positive only trainers that just hate you as a person for what you do, right? This is the world right now, right? Like differing opinions means that you're a bad person, right? And unfortunately, when it comes to that, there's no productive conversation that's going to come out of that. I genuinely don't feel like it can happen, right? I think that they dislike what we do so much and think it's so wrong that they're not willing to objectively look at what they're doing because of that, right? And look at how what we're doing is possibly providing any sort of value, right? So I've had a lot of positive only trainers single me out and just be like, what you're doing is horrible. And especially because, again, young guy that was putting out a lot of content, I got fucking hammered a couple times. One time in particular, do you remember Hobbs? Mm-hmm. He goes to Heights Daycare still.
216.
Hobbs in the 216.
Yeah.
Right. So we had this little dog, Hobbs, super cool dog, did a board and train with us. And he was a really, really fearful dog, right? Had some like fear aggression issues. It wasn't anything major, but he'd kind of snap at you when he was scared and stuff. When he did his board and train, first like couple days he was with us, he would just fucking growl at you. Anytime you walked past his crate, he would just scared, right? Whatever. So I made a video one time called interacting with a fearful dog, right? Or interacting with a fear aggressive dog or something like that, right? And in the video, all it was me showing body language cues of when the dog was really tense versus when they were looser. When they were really tense, when they were looser. And the example I used in it was I was trying to put a collar on him, right? Or trying to pet him. And I was kind of down on his level. And I saw when I would get closer to him, you would get the, he would start holding his breath and moving away, and you get the bug eyes and stuff like that. And I started showing how when I would interact with a dog like that, what I would do is I would push right to the limit of where I would see that, and I would wait. And I would wait until I saw him go from the to, right? And he would start panting, and you would see his whole body just, right? And I used the example of the panting is what I was looking for in that exact moment as a sign that the dog was loosening up, right? Which was correct, right? He went from tense to loose. And when he started panting, that's when I interacted or put the collar on or whatever it was, and I didn't have any problems with it, right? I don't know what it was, a couple positive only trainers or something, repost it on like big positive only Facebook pages, right? And it blew the fuck up. I had literally for 4 days straight, every 10 minutes, I was getting a message or a Facebook comment or something like that. Yeah, this was on Facebook at the time, right? Of literally people like, you fucking idiot. The dog is stress panting. Have you ever heard of it? Blah, blah. I was legitimately getting death threats over it. People were talking about how they wanted to come and beat the shit out of me over it. People were saying how they wanted to come put fucking prong collars and e-collars on me and fucking hang me with them and stuff like that. Dude, it was absolutely ridiculous. Like just madness. And I'm talking 4 days straight of this where like every like 10 minutes to half hour is getting some sort of message about it. Right?
I would be traumatized, honestly.
Dude.
I would be in cold sweats for 4 days. How did you feel about? I mean, obviously, it wasn't a positive experience.
So here's
a positive experience.
So I typically am pretty good at just brushing shit off, right? Like, there's not a lot that bothers me. I'm pretty good at being like, you're a fucking idiot. You know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I don't really care.
They came at
but
you,
it was
bro.
relentless, man. And like, I do remember, like, it wasn't like, listen, I wasn't like shaking in my boots over it or anything like that. But I do remember hitting a point just being like, Jesus Christ, this is insane. Like just constant, just negative things being said about you over and over and over and over again for a harmless video. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't even doing any training in the video or anything. Like, the dog just had a prong collar on it, right?
Well, you got to kill my vibe.
Yeah, right. So I do remember just being like bummed, like, fuck, like, it's just negativity after negativity after negativity, right? And that was the one and only time I ever remember just getting hammered over something like that, right, online. And I've talked about this I was on my friend Dave's podcast, and we talked about this example in it. And you know what was interesting is, so I had owned Heights for a little while at that point. I worked for somebody for a couple of years. I think I was maybe a year and a half or so into Heights, and we posted a lot of content on there. And Heights had a pretty good following at that point and stuff. But I had just started transitioning to posting stuff from like my David Turpak Facebook page and the David the Dog Trainer page on Instagram, right? And this was very early in that Facebook page's infancy, right? It was like I probably had like 100 followers or something like that, you know? I genuinely believe that these positive only trainers target new trainers to try to just fucking squash them from ever flourishing. You know, it just felt like that. And I see it a lot with new trainers on their pages where they'll get singled out like that and just get fucking blown up over stuff. And I can imagine if you are not ready for that, that could just completely crush your drive to continue doing it. Right. If I were actually brand new, right. I wasn't. I had been training for a while at that point. But if I were actually brand new, I can't even imagine how I would have felt from that, you know, if that happened like 6 months into me being a trainer or something, you know? So that sucked. I remember that. That was the worst experience for sure. As far as asshole trainers, right? As far as the other side of the equation, you know,
anything in person.
Yeah, not. Well, I mean, so it's no stranger that like Scott Purdom from Evolution Canine fucking hates me, right? I mean, like, we talked about this before. Come on, you know, like, he's Evolution Canine in the flats. Doesn't matter, you know, like whatever. Like, he's fine. Like, we have an okay relationship with each other, but like, you know, there have been some times being around him that it's just been like, you're clearly talking down on me right now. Like, you clearly don't have any respect for what I do. Whatever, I don't care. It is what it is.
Mansplaining to a man,
basically, you know. A couple of instances with trainers out on the West Coast that I had reached out to for help over certain things and actually paid them money for help. And then it was just like I paid them like a decent amount of money for help. And then if I had any sort of additional follow-up questions about anything that we had talked about, it's just like, okay, cool, you need to pay me again. You need to pay me again. You need to pay me again kind of thing, which, listen, they charge an hourly rate for their phone consults for a reason. I get that, and I try to be kind of understanding about that, but that's just not the way I want to run my business, you know?
It's kind of cold.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where, like, if you're coming to me looking for help and looking to be mentored and stuff like that, I'm not going to constantly be looking at, like, how do I squeeze another penny out of you? How do I squeeze another penny out of you kind of thing. You know, I think at some point you hit a point where it's just like, come on, man. Like, do we really have to play this game right now? But aside from that, nothing against my training itself, you know? It's never been anything like that. It's more so just been things that I look at that they do necessarily, and I'm just like, that's kind of dickly, you know? I don't really like that a whole lot. But I would say the majority of it comes from the positive only trainers.
Yep.
Coming up to the
It's
podcast.
so close-minded, though.
The
The only thing that is comforting about that is that you know that those closed-minded people are going to be right still there.
Yeah.
As the whole industry moves into a more intelligent direction or whatever.
Actually, you know what's one other good point on that is when I was in the sport dog community, the sport dog community basically thinks anybody, and we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, basically thinks anybody that doesn't do sport dog training is like incompetent and an idiot, right? Like I've seen, you know, some of the guys that were extremely talented at the sport dog community, but didn't really have businesses or good names for themselves or anything like that in their pet dog worlds. They just kind of did it on the side. I remember like when Tyler Muda, when he was kind of coming to fruition and like starting to put a lot of content out there and building like a national recognition for himself and stuff, I remember the people in the sport dog community just being like, fuck this guy, he's such an idiot, he's taking concepts we've been doing forever and, you know, coining them as like coming up with new names for themselves and trying to like brand it as his own thing and stuff like that. It's like, come on, guys, like we're all trying to help the same thing, do the same goal.
That goes back to my previous point of there's a difference between being inspired and you can use other people. Like every note has been played, I'm sorry. So whether I call it place or I call it bed, it doesn't fucking matter. You're doing the same thing. And you know what? You learned that shit from someone else.
Yeah.
So, and that person learned it from someone else. So
it's been passed around, you know, and here's the thing, like if they're going to take, and it was something as simple, I remember in Tyler's case, he was taking like the leash pressure we teach, right? Pressure and release, all that. He started coining it as conversational leash work, right? Which I think is a fucking great name for it, first off, right? Sure. Conversational leash work. The idea that we're communicating with the leash. The leash is its independent form of communication. Yeah. And it had been something that, again, it's been used in the sport dog world forever. It's been used in all these different worlds forever, right? But he packaged it in a way where it was easily digestible to your average dog owner, and he was really pushing it heavily, and he was really pushing the idea of using this leash in such a gentle, clear manner, right? As opposed to old school yank and crank dog training that was really popular before and gave prong collar training and choke chain training and stuff like that a bad name, right? So he was doing a really good thing in my eyes, but instead it was just like, oh, this guy's becoming popular, and what it felt like to me is like, we're not getting recognition as these sport dog competitor trainers, and our pet dog training industries aren't thriving like his is, but we've been doing this since before he has, kind of thing. So it kind of felt like, well, why am I not getting popular even though I'm doing the same thing? But it was a marketing tactic, right? He's a good business guy. He knew how to fucking package it in a way where people liked it.
That's the other thing, too, that's so frustrating. Going back to, like, everyone has to be a TV personality, whether you're a plumber or whatever. And sometimes they have the one up on that when you're just totally comfortable being a ham in front of the camera. And you're comfortable with social media and you know, you can.
It's a part of the game. We live in a technology and media driven society. I know. You know, and that's why, you know, we invest a lot of money into our media at Miracle, right? Is because I've seen how it benefits us, right? So, you know, I think that's a part of the game at this point, right? You could be a great dog trainer and stuff, but if you want to achieve the success that's building a really big business, right? No choice. You have no choice other than to kind of succumb to that.
So
right?
frustrating.
It's the rules of the game, right? Whether you like it or not. It's the industry we're in.
You have to, and I was hoping that I could avoid that, but I'm not going to be able to. And we talked about it yesterday, where I had the one woman call me and talk to me on the phone for an hour about a very simple issue for me, anyway. And she 3 days later emailed me and said, you know, can you please supply the phone numbers of any personal clients that you've dealt with that have had the same problems that I've had? And I'm thinking in my head, like, how fucking unprofessional would that
Super
be? Like if
unprofessional.
Lou the plumber gave my fucking number away
Yeah.
to some rando and I got a call. So
Yeah.
what's up with Lou? Who is this?
Hey, so I wanted to talk about a sink repair you had done originally last week, What a weird conversation that would be.
But really think about it. I don't think there's a single person in the world that would be comfortable. Like, I don't even think she would be comfortable if someone gave away her personal information.
Yeah.
And I do have, how often do you deal with that where, I know you said you dealt with it a little bit, but
Not that often anymore. Like I said, early on, stuff like that. Early on, we used to get a lot more of the people that like called us and like almost wanted us to sell ourselves to them, wanted us to give the sales pitch and do this and do that. That's a whole part of the media side of things is you build the trust that way, right? Where people know what they're getting. It's black and white. It's transparent, So not anywhere near as much. Now, to the social media standpoint, though, like and to needing to be the celebrity on the camera kind of thing, I think a lot of it that a lot of people don't realize, too, is you have so many different mediums you could choose from where you just need to find which one you're most comfortable with. So before I was comfortable on a camera, 90% of my stuff was written posts. I would sit there in my fucking living room in the middle of the night and I would type out a fucking 6-paragraph long little post, put it up there, right? I was able to read it over. I was able to make sure that I wrote it out in a way that I really liked. And I could tell that's one of your strengths just based on the spreadsheet thing you showed me of your lessons and stuff like that is you could verbalize stuff very well.
that's
right?
when I blew up actually is I wrote an article on Nextdoor. Well, blow up.
Sure.
I got the most business I had ever gotten
yeah.
from one, little post or whatever.
So I'd be taking advantage of that if I were you. And don't worry so much about the camera stuff, especially if you feel really awkward doing that, because you're already practicing that through your lessons, right? So you're already practicing your ability to articulate things and getting comfortable speaking in front of different types of people and stuff, where it's still different when you turn the camera on. But once you get all that stuff totally rock solid good, it makes it way easier once you stand in front of that camera,
I think you're right.
But I think you should focus on your strengths then at that point, right? Don't worry so much about the videos. People love, blogs are still huge right now. People love written posts. I notice a clear difference between when I put something on camera versus when I make those written posts still. I don't do them as often, but people still love those. So I'd be focusing on stuff like that for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you have to have some video. You've said it many times. Most dog trainers will have those stingy ass before and afters.
Yeah.
And it's so important to catch you, going through the process. If for anything else, people should understand that it's dog training isn't, because they work with positive trainers. They think that it's supposed to be so smooth and happy-go-lucky, and it's just not the case.
Yeah,
So
not
that's
the way it works.
That's how you set older women up for crying in the middle of lessons because they weren't expecting that.
Yeah. You gotta kind of prep them for things sometimes. I had Emily asked me that the other day. She's like, in one-on-ones, do you ever run into situations where the dogs start like alligator rolling and flipping and just being psychos? I was like, yeah. She's like, well, what do you do in that moment? And I explained to her, I was like, listen, though I know from a training standpoint, you just got to kind of work through it. Sometimes it's best, even though you're going to reinforce it for a second, just stop. The second you start seeing it, stop what you're doing, explain what's happening, explain what you're going to do in the next 5 minutes, and then go back into doing it, and then the people are fine with it.
I'm going to take that. Thank you.
Listen, because again, as a trainer, it's like, fuck, if I stop right now, I'm going to reinforce it. But listen, it's been being reinforced for the last fucking year of the dog's life, 2 years of the dog's life. So it happening one more time, does that really matter? No.
It's just, once again, this is so humbling because I feel good one day and I'm like, the next day I look to the past. I'm like, fuck, I should have.
Totally. I get it. Listen,
It's like a black hole trying to consume as much information as possible. And then one day you're comfortable, the next day you're uncomfortable with who you were yesterday.
Sure.
But it's a great process.
Well, listen, I think Krista asked me this recently or somebody did, right? They asked me also, have you ever had somebody in a lesson stop you and say, I don't want to do this anymore?
Ooh.
Right?
Have you?
Yep.
Shut the fuck up.
Not in a fucking long time, right? But here's the thing. Even though I know I wasn't in those situations doing anything, it was a situation like yours, right? Leash pressure stuff, dogs freaking out, dogs losing their cool.
Should have been fine.
Yeah, I remember one situation in particular. I'll explain it real quick. This is
please.
how we're going to end it. So I was doing a 2-hour-long 2-dog session, right? It was 2 boxers. They were litter mates, and they were about 2 years old, and they were absolute psycho fucking pass, right?
Anxious,
reactive, just absolutely uncontrollable. They had done for the last year positive only training with different places, and this was their, we're going to try this, right? We're going to try the balanced training approach, right?
Did they buy a full package
Or
or
a full package for the dogs,
fuck.
full 7 session, I think, for both of the dogs, whatever. 2-hour first session. We fit the dogs up with prong collars. And, dude, I'm not even joking. Like, just holding the prong, dogs absolutely losing their marbles.
without it even on?
No, I mean, like, on, but I'm just holding the leash. I'm not, like, actively training or doing anything or anything like that. It's just every time they felt that pressure, they're just freaking the fuck out, right? Like we just talked about, it's not because it was creating pain. It's not because the prong collar didn't work with those dogs. It's because they got away for the last 2 years with doing whatever they want and only having positive only training done to them, right? So they needed to have it work through. So in my mind, from a training standpoint, I need to work these dogs past this, right? We're going to keep working on it. And listen, it was like 2 hours of struggle with both of the dogs, right? Like 2 hours of chaos, right? Them freaking out, them kind of getting somewhere, them sliding back and this and that. And in my mind, I'm like, damn, these people need to realize like this is why you guys are here. This is the boat you're in. This is what we need to work on, right? We ended with a little bit of success, this, that, right? And I remember the session, like the owners were pretty quiet most of the session, right? I got a phone call the next morning from the husband. Hey, you know, we were really upset with the training yesterday. We really didn't like how it went. We've decided that we're not going to continue to pursue this. I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, I gave them their money back, whatever, right? And looking at that again, you could from an egotistical place be like, you don't fucking get it, right? But it's my job to show them it. You know, it's my job to explain it and get them to get it, right? And I didn't spend enough time when I started seeing how bad that was, explaining everything to them and explaining how that correlated to the issues that they had and all this kind of stuff, right? So because of that, I lost the business. And I had somebody that left there thinking David the dog trainer is a fucking idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing, right? He's, you know, potentially he's abusing dogs, right? Or doing anything like that, right? So that's the importance of, you know, like, again, it's not that you did anything wrong as a trainer, but what you did wrong was just not explain what you were doing well enough, right? Where I don't want anybody to feel like that throughout a session, right? So the second I start seeing that, I try to be really conscious of it. I'm so in tune with perception, I feel like, and how we're being perceived as a whole, because we already have such a negative perception on what we're doing.
Stigmas
to begin with. There's so many stigmas on it, right? So, you know, if a new client walks into the facility and a dog jumps on a pen in the back and I tell him no and give him a big correction, the dog's like, whoa, right? I am aware, I could look at that and be like, whoa, this brand new person just walked in and the first thing they fucking saw is that, right? I know we're not doing anything wrong. I know we're not abusing dogs or hurting dogs or anything like that, but some people need to be eased into that kind of stuff. And until I have a relationship with that client, I'm hyper aware of those things.
And even as a man, to be honest, in my opinion, you can get away with less than, you know, if a female were, you know, a softer voice female were training a dog and it reacted a little bit, you know, they might give her a little bit more slack. That's just me.
Sure.
But if you're doing it for the right reason, I still think about that dog. You know, the parents aside, whatnot, I still think the worst part about that was, and I'm sure you can relate, is that realizing how fucked up those dogs were and how unhappy and anxious, you know, they had to go through their lives feeling, and knowing that I couldn't help them.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
That
100%, man.
That's the worst.
You know,
that's
and these are the learning. You know, these are the learning experiences.
Like, why won't you let me help you?
You figure this stuff out, but you know, again, and I could have done everything correctly, and I could have explained it and everything, and maybe they still would have been those types of people that it's like, listen, this isn't for us, you know, and that's fine. But I will always try to look at things of what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? You know, and I think that's how you keep growing, right? So that's a good one to end on right there.
Yeah,
that's fucking good.
Keep growing.
That's good.
I've never talked about that. That's good. I like.
Yeah.
These are things that you learn from, right? And these are things that new trainers need to hear, I think. You know, these are things that are important to always check, you know, not get too in on yourself.
And I think the best part about working with you guys, you know, I'm by myself, you know, so when I come in there, you probably have figured this out, that every job I've ever worked at, I've always had a coworker to be like, am I fucking crazy?
Sure.
No, you're not crazy.
Dog training, you're kind of by yourself. That is a hard industry because you're solo.
So when I come in there, my first like 5 to 10 questions for you is just like, do you you ever get this? Or has this
Yeah.
ever happened? I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, dude. You got to do this because
All
they
the
don't
time,
know,
man.
you know.
All the time.
And I leave there like, okay, thank you for that.
Hell yeah. Any last points? Anybody got?
No.
This was
That was
good.
good.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. This was great.
Oh, my pleasure.
Do it
It's an
again.
honor.
Yeah.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Josh, where are they going to find you?
Josh Dobey Productions on Instagram, and that is also my website.
How long have you been in Philly for?
I come back Sunday,
Nice.
so just a couple days.
You guys going to do anything else? You're getting tattooed. You're doing some photos. Is there a lot to do in Philly?
Yes,
I've only been there one. You go see the Liberty Bell.
I've done that a few times now. I don't have to do that again, but
We only played there once. We played in Philly once, and we
Yeah.
had like not even half a day to explore.
yeah, no, it's great. Their Chinatown. Oh my
banging?
God, they. Do you know what dim sum is?
Yeah.
Dude, the best dim sum you've ever had, and it's like $5 for like 10 of those freaking stink little buns.
Hell
And
the
so
best.
you just go in there and you can just you spend like you get like this much like food, and then it's just like
$4.
Yeah, $35. That would be like $200 somewhere else, you know. But other than that, I mean, that's the big thing is like Philly's got a huge melting pot. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you can get the best food there. I mean, I don't know, man. It's
Their comfort food scene, I hear, is. I've never been, but I hear that if you're going for like Americana fusion comfort food,
Yeah.
like you're gonna be
Oh, yeah.
full and happy there.
yeah, and Philly people are hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying, man. They kind of have that weird like accent. It's not like
Are they all like Kevin Hart?
Is he from Philly?
kind of little Will Smith too.
That's why he's all Eagles, Philadelphia Eagles. Remember when Eagles won the Super Bowl a couple years ago?
Yeah,
And
he was
there were
wild.
all these viral videos going around of Kevin Hart just fucked up out of his
Yeah.
mind, just like jumping on the stage, grabbing the trophy, and it was so funny. It
Yeah,
Oh, I do remember that.
was hilarious, just making a fool of himself, but it was so funny.
He was wasted. I remember that now. And he was very confused as to whether or not he was supposed to give like a Super Bowl speech. And he was like,
yeah,
"Oh fuck, where's
Did
the
it.
party end and start?" And
yeah.
that
And
was funny.
And I'll tell you, that's the one of the best things about Philly is they put all their stadiums on the outside of the city.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's easy to park.
Yeah, that's
You know,
cool.
yeah, it's right off the high. Like you just get off the highway, so it's like really smooth compared to how Cleveland. Like you go down there, like a freaking Browns game's going on or a freaking Indians game.
It's
a mess.
I envy the people that were able to watch the Cleveland Cavaliers at Richfield Coliseum.
Yeah,
Richfield,
right.
if you're listening, you don't know where that's at. It's in the middle of really nowhere. There's a lot of land, and
Yeah.
just as you described, there was
Yeah.
just
My
nothing but
uncle used
parking.
to work there, and he tells me stories all the time about like different like rock concerts he would see there, and like he
Yeah.
saw Rush there, and AC/DC, and all these fucking bands and stuff. And then yeah, obviously the games. Sounds like that place was sweet.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Eat well, my friend.
I will.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm definitely excited. It's gonna be a fun time. So
Matt, you got some? Do you have social media channels?
You know, I'm in the middle of a branding thing. I think I was telling you yesterday. So, you know, when I first started, I was throwing some shit. I deep down knew, I wasn't going to admit it to you, but deep down I knew all I wanted to do was train dogs.
Yeah.
There's nothing stimulating about walking a dog.
Hell yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
So, but my name currently is Greenwood Pet Services. Well, I've had a lot of people call me to ask me to feed their cats and to walk their dogs. And the very last final step was 2 weeks ago. Someone called me and asked me if I could stop by to feed their iguana.
That was it.
Their iguana and their gerbil while they were out of town for one day and they were never going to need
done.
me. So I just priced it out and I was like, this is fucking it. Like Greenwood, that's where I live, Greenwood Village in Sagamore Hills.
Yeah.
K9, that's what I work with. Training is what I fucking do with them. I don't
Yeah.
care what my logo, I just want to be specific. So
Yeah.
right now you can find me at greenwoodpetservices.com or 216-644-4141.
There we go.
no more iguanas.
No more fucking
Don't call me that goddamn iguana.
What a wild thing! I would never.
Oh, a fucking ferret. That was another one.
I used to love ferrets a long time ago. Then I realized how much they smell, and I realized I never
they
wanted one
stink.
ever.
Little skunks.
Rodents.
Bro.
Have you seen? There's a guy at Edgewater that walks his ferrets all the time.
Oh my
Shut
God.
up, really?
I have
All the
not
time. He's
seen
got him on a leash. He's there all day during the summer.
On a harness or what?
Harness.
Probably
he'll just
way
take 'em out.
leash
He's got
reactive,
two of
right?
'em. Dude, they're just Jay chilling all the time. It's funny. It's a good distraction for the dog. Sometimes I'll walk them
yeah.
past there and they'll be like, the fuck is that
Oh
thing?
my god, you're never gonna get that kind of exposure for proofing again.
Hell
Yeah.
no.
That's crazy.
So, good stuff. All right, we're 30 seconds away from 2 minutes. We did a good job today.
From 2 minutes?
2 hours.
I was like, oh no.
Deleted all.
It would have been longer if we didn't fucking delete 7 minutes of the goddamn podcast. I really hope you guys weren't talking about anything too interesting. I lost track
I
of
think
it
we
at a
got
certain
most
point.
of it.
Yeah.
I think there was one
we
thing I said, but I
reiterated
don't
pretty well.
remember. So it is.
We did better the second time anyway. We
Yeah.
summarized and we moved
Yeah,
on.
we got to. We got to test through that part.
Yeah. All right. 2 hours. We're going to wrap that up. You can hit us up at Miracle Canine Training or David the Dog Trainer or miraclecanintraining.com for all your training needs. Thanks. Bye.